People's concentration on activities with great potential repercussions is the main factor behind success. People's concentration on low or non-existent potential consequences is the main cause of failure. I have dedicated my life to be a small and medium-sized entrepreneur. In the second half of my life, I have concentrated on helping others succeed as small and medium-sized business owners. This exactly matches what Joe was saying earlier. The famous Drucker quotation, "The very worst use of time is to work intensely on something that need not be done at all." 2 days ago, Carl Stram of the Marion Ewing Kauffman Foundation, the leading foundation on entrepreneurship, penned an item in the Wall Street Journal. He pointed out that there have been very few empirical research on what genuinely makes a corporation successful. Most of what is taught in entrepreneurial departments at colleges, he said, is useless. Actually, he observed that among the 686 entrepreneurship teachers, their main emphasis is on supporting their own ideas. That entrepreneurs should start with a business plan. They claim that having a business plan guarantees success and spend 2 years guiding students in their creation of one. Though some of the most successful firms in the world today start without a business plan, we are only starting to grasp what actually drives company success. By helping you learn considerably faster, Joe is saving years of effort, 100, even 1,000 of hours, which would otherwise be lost. Though anything has a learning curve, the secret is to avoid it. We don't want to spend years finding out how to obtain a certain amount of income. In the past 5 years, I've focused on seminars, books, articles, and programs for small and medium-sized business owners and prospective entrepreneurs. Now, I have just 45 minutes, so I'll need to compress what I sometimes discuss in multi-day workshops. But I understand that you are among of the smartest individuals in the world, capable of digesting a lot of information in a short period. Is that true? Did anyone not comprehend the question? I'll strive to emphasize significant topics quickly. One intriguing scenario that was in the news recently featured Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Bill Gates' sector during a dinner party. They were having a conversation when a gentleman approached them and asked, "What is the most important quality for success?" According to a bystander, all three of them stopped their discussion, turned, and simultaneously answered, "Focus. Focus is the most critical factor for success in today's fast-moving world. If you can focus, you can succeed. If you cannot, you will struggle. It's nearly black and white." That resonated with me since Joe and I originally linked through my Focal Point program, which I established years ago. It gathered company owners together to teach them how to focus. Over 3 years, we addressed every area of business, marketing, or competition positioning, with 882 exercises emphasizing focus. My offer wasn't as enticing as Joe's, but I guaranteed that participants would double their income and their time off within 12 months. Or they wouldn't have to pay for the program. I never had to offer a refund. In fact, many people doubled or quadrupled their income within 30 days simply by learning to focus. I recently read a story about a highly successful entrepreneur in New Zealand. He attended one of my seminars years ago and characterized it as a turning moment in his life. At the time, he was broke and unemployed. He walked out of that session as a completely new person, with written goals in hand. Shortly afterward, he noticed an article about Starbucks and the expanding coffee shop trend in the U.S. It mentioned that specialty coffee shops with Wi-Fi were becoming social hubs. Though he understood nothing about coffee, he responded immediately. Before long, he owned 80 coffee shops across Australia and New Zealand. Later, due to a divorce, he had to sell the business for $50 million to share the revenues with his wife. However, He retained the international rights and is now rebuilding. At the end of that piece, the interviewer asked him what advice he would give to prospective entrepreneurs. His reaction was simple: focus and fail fast. That phrase remained with me because it coincides with what I've learned over the years. The sooner you fail and learn, the faster you succeed. Thomas J. Watson famously remarked, if you want to increase your rate of success, you must double your rate of failure. Success, as he saw it, lies on the other side of failure. Over the years, I've read much, and recently, I came across a thought I want to share with you. We touched on it a bit previously. The notion is this: what is the most valuable and highest paid work you do? When I initially met this question, I didn't have an immediate answer. What do you think is the highest paid, most valuable work you do? The answer is simple: thinking. Thinking is the most valuable labor you do. I am a successful author, known for my work on time management, goal planning, and other areas. I began researching time management roughly 30 years ago, and during my research, I came across a phrase that made a tremendous impact: consequences. It essentially argues that something is important if it bears big potential repercussions, and something is unimportant if it has little or no potential implications. The number one reason for success is that people focus on things with high potential consequences. The number one reason for failure is that individuals focus on things with minimal or no possible consequences. This ties into something Joe mentioned earlier. The famous Peter Drucker quote, the very worst use of time is to work intently on something that need not be done at all. One of the things that's holding back entrepreneurs, and frankly, is destroying an entire generation, is the obsession with technology. I watch individuals wandering about addicted to their phones, almost like junkies. They cannot stop gazing at their devices, continually tapping buttons. I'm sure some folks here would even identify this problem in themselves. But this fixation with technology is unhealthy. It inhibits people from focusing. You can't concentrate if you're continuously distracted. It's like a dog with attention deficit disorder, constantly responding to every distraction, ringing bell, or notification. Just to make a quick point, if thinking is the most important thing you do, because the consequences of your thinking determine the entire quality of your life, then the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. The more time you spend thinking clearly, the more effective you will be. Over the years, I've had the pleasure to work with some very powerful people, billionaires and multi-billionaires, some of whom are on the Forbes 400 list. I've been with them in periods of crisis, when severe difficulties arise. What struck me was that they all had one common trait: they remained calm. While people around them were furious, agitated, or anxious about what transpired, these folks maintained composure, much like a pond that's completely still. I appreciated their tranquility, but I didn't understand why they were so peaceful until later. I learned that when your mind is quiet, your cerebellum, the brain's reasoning and decision-making center, functions at its highest level. It's like cranking up the light on a dimmer switch. Your mind is performing at its best. However, when you're angry or disturbed, your thinking transfers to your emotional brain, and your capacity to think clearly declines considerably. You make terrible decisions. That's why in severe situations, you must utilize every technique in the book to keep cool. This is why meditation is so effective. It helps educate your brain to be calm, even in a crisis, which permits clearer thinking. A couple of years ago, Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist and neuroscientist, published a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a dense book, not one I would recommend for casual reading. But I will tell you the substance of the book. Kahneman states that there are two styles of thinking, fast thinking and slow thinking. Fast thinking is intuitive, instinctual, and automatic. It's the style of thinking you use while you're navigating through heavy traffic or making hasty decisions without much consideration. Slow thinking, on the other hand, is deliberate. It's when you take time to consider things through thoroughly. If the issue has minimal or no ramifications, you can apply rapid thinking. For example, determining what to have for lunch, picking something up from a buffet, or where to park your car. All of these are decisions with limited consequences. But when you're confronting a big issue, slow thinking is important. Take a minute, pause, and ponder before making your decision. Kahneman's conclusion, which made the book so successful, is that the largest mistake people make is employing quick thinking when they should be utilizing slow thinking. Entrepreneurs are particularly guilty of this. They make critical decisions that have long-term consequences without taking the time to think through them properly. Consequences in terms of affecting people's lives, costing money, and even leading to the bankruptcy of a business often result from making decisions too quickly. We rely on fast thinking when, in truth, we should be participating in slow thought. Now, I'm a great admirer of Peter Drucker, as many people are, and he once said something profound about selecting the proper people. Hiring the appropriate individuals to work with you is vital, and one of the biggest mistakes people make is hiring too fast. When you employ hastily, you often make terrible choices. The best recruiting judgments are made when you take your time. Drucker famously observed that hasty decisions about people are inevitably erroneous. Hiring an essential individual for an important job bears significant ramifications. Therefore, you must take your time. One of the ideas I teach, which I explain in my book, How to Hire and Keep the Best People, is a simple rule that can raise hiring accuracy to 90%. I've taught this strategy to Fortune 500 firms, and many have incorporated it as a hard guideline within their organizations. Brian's rule is this: you cannot hire without following a defined process. I didn't invent this. I merely researched the hiring processes of firms that consistently acquire and retain the top individuals. These companies all stick to a systematic approach from the beginning, following it religiously with no deviations. As a result, their hiring accuracy reaches 90% or higher because they prioritize thoughtful thinking. An fascinating professor at the University of San Diego produced a book last year about decision-making. His research supports the assumption that the longer you take to make an important decision, the better the outcome. The quality of the decision improves with time. Lord Acton once observed, it is not necessary to decide. It is necessary not to decide. In other words, if you can buy more time for a decision, do so. Delay it if possible, whether for a day, a weekend, a week, or even a month. Some of the best judgments are the ones you let to steep, like tea in water. Thoughtful decision making is key. We refer to this concept as thinking fast and slow. Any decision that has long-term repercussions should be treated with slow thinking. This means discussing it with others, reflecting quietly, taking a stroll, letting it marinate, or even sleeping on it. There's a reason people say, if it's a big decision, sleep on it. Now, I want to offer 3 critical thinking tools and then 7 crucial principles. The first thinking skill I always emphasize at the outset of my lectures is called zero-based thinking. Anyone who has known me for a while knows that I continuously stress this topic. Zero-based thinking derives from zero-based accounting, where instead of just increasing spending for the next quarter, you ask, should we really be incurring this expense at all? With zero-based thinking, you analyze your entire position by asking, knowing what I know now, is there anything I am doing that I wouldn't start over today if I had to do it over? This is one of the most powerful thinking skills I've ever learned. In times of stress, asking this question brings immediate clarity. Everyone has an answer to this question. Some even have many answers. There are always activities people are engaged in today that, knowing what they now know, they wouldn't start again. Products they wouldn't provide. People they wouldn't recruit. Investments they wouldn't make. These are the greatest difficulties in life. They function like a marine anchor, drawing you down and impeding progress. How can you detect a zero-based thinking situation? The answer is stress. Chronic stress. Something that lingers in your mind even when others are speaking. Something you dwell on while driving. Something that keeps you awake at night, frustrates you, or angers you, is a prime candidate for zero-based thinking. The key question to ask is, if I were not already in this situation, knowing what I now know, would I enter into it again today? If the answer is no, the next question is, how do I get out? And how fast? Once you understand you wouldn't join the circumstance again, it's already too late to correct it. The only thing left to determine is how long you are willing to bear the fare, the financial and emotional agony before you walk away. The most crucial criterion for practicing zero, one that many people struggle with. Courage is courage. I call it the C word. You need the fortitude to analyze every element of your life and ask, is there anything I'm doing today that, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't do again? The beginning point for zero-based thinking is always relationships, both personal and professional. Every time I deliver this talk, divorces inevitably happen in that city within weeks. People go home, contemplate, and conclude, if I hadn't married this person, I wouldn't marry them again today. That realization, the Quincy analysis, is what makes them miserable. Many people work tirelessly on the outside to achieve success while ignoring the fundamental issues holding them back. Inside, people are frustrated and unhappy because they're in situations that, knowing what they now know, they would never have entered. I call this a Quink analysis, and I encourage you to do this for the rest of your life and assist others do it as well. Quink stands for knowing what I now know. Apply this analysis to everything. For instance, in my company, we often ask, if we hadn't hired this person and they walked in today to apply for their current position, knowing what we now know, would we hire them? If the answer is no, they're gone that same day. There's a rule in one of my books that states, the best time to fire someone is the first time it crosses your mind. After that, it's simply misery and suffering. And the longer you keep someone around, the more likely they are to sue you. The longer the lawsuit drags on, the more pricey it becomes. So, if you discover you've made a mistake, have the bravery to recognize it and cut your losses. There's a terrific book called The Zurich Axioms, published by a successful New York financier. It talks on the principles of success, particularly the guidelines followed by the so-called genomes of Zurich, or whatever they are. The number one rule for success in company and personal life is to cut your losses as soon as you know a mistake has been made. Whether it's a terrible investment, job, or relationship. As they say in Las Vegas, cut your losses and let your winnings ride. The same goes for life. The faster you minimize your losses, the sooner you can start focusing on more productive things. The second area of attention is business model innovation. Joe and I were talking about and what I think is a revolutionary new field. Though it's neither new nor revolutionary. It's business model innovation, which is the premise that your current business model is likely outmoded. If you're in a firm that employs technology for marketing, especially information-based or knowledge-based sectors like consulting or training, chances are your business model needs an overhaul. Your company model is simply the step-by-step procedure by which you earn profit. Some companies suffer for years only to find a new business model and suddenly experience a 5 to 10-fold boost in profitability. They move from struggling to driving Cadillacs and flying private jets. What did they do? They modified their business model. If you don't, your competitors will adapt and they'll take your lunch. Or worse, you'll go bankrupt. This doesn't imply your present business model is incorrect. It merely indicates that it might be outmoded. A better, greater business model might exist, and your duty is to find it. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to business model optimization, but I feel it's a crucial area of concentration. Constantly question yourself, do I need to change my business model? That includes reevaluating how you generate sales, deliver products and services, and achieve profitability. The third area involves investments, time, emotions, and money. People especially hate to waste time. Once we've committed significant time into a course of action, project, business, or relationship, it's hard to say it was a waste. The same goes for emotions. If we've put a lot of emotional energy into something, whether it's a product, project, or relationship, it's difficult to accept it was a mistake. And of course, with money, accepting a loss can feel extremely terrible. But you must have the courage to cut your losses when you realize a situation isn't working out, or knowing what you now know. The reason I stress cutting your losses first is that you can't make progress unless you clear the clutter. Unless you rid yourself of metaphoric 800-pound gorilla holding you back. Many firms I've dealt with have changed into multi-million-dollar enterprises after completing a quick analysis and understanding that half the things they were doing and half the people weren't the appropriate fit. Halfway employed that time. They also understood that half of their products weren't selling and never would. In today's marketplace, many firms are being displaced by cheaper, faster, and more efficient solutions. When a significant firm confronts problems, they generally bring in an analyst who swiftly examines the issue. This analyst comes in with a chainsaw strategy, shutting down all unproductive factories and stores. In 1 year, the company can move from profits to losses. The second thinking skill I teach people is WPO thinking, which stands for worst possible outcome. Always ask yourself, what's the worst possible outcome of this course of action? And can I survive it if it happens? If not, what steps can I take to prevent it from happening? The major reason we worry about anything in life is fear. When you ask yourself what the worst case situation is, and you realize that you can handle it, your worry disappears. This insight settles your thoughts, and you transfer focus to ensuring the worst doesn't happen. This proactive strategy helps you take charge of your life. If you ever find yourself distracted by chats or low-value activities, tell yourself to get back to work and focus on your ultimate analysis. Ultimately, nothing will benefit you more in your career than creating a reputation as someone who completes crucial things swiftly and well. This reputation will make you one of the most valued and respected individuals in your field. Every big achievement in history was preceded by extended periods of hard, focused labor. Single tasking is committing to a task and not diverting attention until it's 100% complete. If you repeat back to work to yourself anytime tempted to stop, you can shorten the time needed to accomplish a task by 50% or more. Studies reveal that continually beginning and stopping an activity can increase the time needed by as much as 500%. Each time you resume work, you have to reorient yourself, overcome inertia, and rebuild momentum, slowing progress. By preparing well and refusing to quit until the task is done, you produce energy and motivation. You become more productive, working faster and more successfully. Once you pick your most critical work, everything else becomes pretty minor. Any other action is less valuable than that primary duty. The more you discipline yourself to stay concentrated on one activity, the more efficient you become. Albert Hubbard defines self-discipline as the ability to do what you should do, when you should do it, regardless of how you feel. Ultimately, success in any career needs considerable self-discipline. Self-mastery and self-control are the cornerstone of good performance. Starting a high-priority task and sticking with it until completion is the genuine test of your character. Willpower and determination. Persistence is self-discipline in action. The fantastic news is that the more you train yourself to persist on critical tasks, the more you acquire self-respect and higher self-esteem. The more you value yourself, the easier it is to maintain discipline. By focusing on your most valuable task and accomplishing it 100%, you improve your character and become a more confident and joyful person. You feel more powerful and productive. Eventually, you'll feel capable of attaining any goal. The key to all of this is to pick the most critical task at any given moment and focus on finishing it. Here's what you can do immediately. Take action now by selecting the most critical work or project you could perform, and then dive into it immediately. Once you begin, keep disciplined and endure without distraction until the task is accomplished. See this as a test of your ability to make a decision and follow through. Once you start, don't stop until the job is done.